Awesome. Well, I want to start off by focusing on React. I know you have some experience with React. Let's go through and ask some React specific questions.
Sure.
So, what is the virtual DOM?
Virtual DOM is like a replica of real DOM. That virtual DOM is basically created by React only, and that runs on algorithm called reconciliation algorithm. Technically, what was happening early on before virtual DOM came into picture, like a normal HTML CSS website, is that time you make a change into something into like a front end side of the code, has to re-render the whole DOM tree, update that data. What reconciliation algorithm does is it actually has the idea where the particular things have changed. For example, if you have changed a button to something like that, API call, you made some changes into it. So instead of simply replacing the whole DOM with a newer DOM, simply changes that, simply patches the new updated version. I mean, and it simply replaces the old version with the new version. That's what reconciliation algorithm does. It is a job of React. That's how virtual DOM works. Virtual DOM is like a replica of the current DOM. Reconciliation algorithm runs on this simple thing that how does it know that something has been updated? It takes the real DOM and virtual DOM and compare these changes. Thing have changed, virtual DOM will not be updated with that data.
Right.
Then it updates. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, what are hooks and what are the benefits of using them?
So hooks are, I would say, like normal JavaScript. I mean, a special kind of JavaScript React functions. What the job they do is that they basically encapsulate some of the functionality of your code that you could have put into the component side of the code. That is the view part of it. Put all of the logic. I mean, you can put all of the logic into that hook and run that thing. So UI part does not have any idea what is going on in business logic of that. You can put everything into that hook, and I mean that's how I use it. You're making API call instead of simply calling it directly, like effect or something. You can put that use effect part into that particular hook, run, and I mean do everything just like in a normal component. Component will not have any problem with messy code that you can write. Thing is gone into the hook part of it. Yeah.
Have you used custom hooks before?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
What's
Actually,
an
I
example?
mentioned about the custom hooks only. I mean, I did not mention about the normal hooks. I only mentioned about the custom hooks. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, talk two hooks in particular. One is use callback, and the other is use memo. So, when you use callback versus use memo.
So, use memo, I mean, the history of use memo comes from this something called memoization. Let me briefly tell you about memoization. It technically means that you want to, for example, running some, you are doing some computation into the front end side or the, I mean, at any place, right? You don't want to keep on computing every time you pass that data to that layer, right? So what you basically create a small JavaScript object and store that value into your system, and simply going directly and computing that value because it is computation heavy. You check into that memo object, so it's more caching, you can say. And memoization does same job use memo does. Use memo allows us to compute something. I mean use memo is like just like a normal hook, compute some data and you have to pass that dependency array. If it has been changed into dependency array, then only this function will run, otherwise it won't run. It will simply be calculated and it will give you a value kind of thing into it, right? And other side, when we talk about callback is associated with the function. Every time you're trying to cache a function, memorize a function, you use callback for that. To keep
Okay.
calling the same function with same input and it should return that. So use callback and it gets you the data. Yeah.
Why would you want to use callback versus just a standard JavaScript function?
There could be multiple. I mean, there is one primary reason I would say is that every time you are doing the same operation on the same thing, it could have a side effect like re-rendering all the time, right? It could be possible that you are re-rendering some small piece of code that should not re-render at all, right? In that case, you can use callback function and it will get you the same data, and it won't even run that, right? So all the re-rendering, that is basically re-rendering is associated with optimization of the whole UI part. So to
Yep.
optimize the whole thing, you use callback. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And what about Redux? What is Redux, and why would you want to use it?
So Okay, let me just go back into the whole thing. Redux is all about it solves one simple problem actually, and that problem React has, that is the pattern that it is designed with. It technically says that React can only pass data from parent to child, which means like it is a single way data binding, and unlike Angular and all, right? So the problem is this, and we solve this problem by creating a Redux store, like a component on the top of the whole your whole React app, and that Redux component can be having, I mean, it will have its own Redux store, right? And the job of Redux is simple, that every component in your app will be accessed by this Redux particularly, and that is the whole logic of state management. So state management is nothing but you have a very big object of multiple pieces in it. You can call them slices if you are using Redux toolkit or something like that, right? And every, I mean, these are like small JavaScript object nested objects, and the big object will be called store, Redux store. And only thing that you do with Redux store is that from any component you can set data into particular slice, or you can get data into something. So you don't have to worry about how will you pass data from child to parent, because everything is connected, and everything is like the whole React app is the children of that particular Redux store.
Hmm.
So you can pass
Okay.
data from that place to this place. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's global state.
Yeah, global
Is
state, correct.
right. Yeah. Um, can you walk me through the process of debugging a React application? So what tools or what techniques would you use to debug?
Yeah. So okay, that depends on what issue I'm facing with. Usually the issue may be like, if I'm facing like I'm getting the error right in front of my screen, then I try to see why it is happening. There may be some file name that it is showing that there is an issue or something like that, right? Or maybe in some cases it could be because of some buggy, or say what you call laggy UI. Okay, so then I go to that component and understand why it is re-rendering multiple times. It may be one of the reason why it is happening. If it is related to Redux, I would say in that case, what we will do is there is plugin for Redux tool. I mean Redux dev tools, right? We can use that, and for the React one, we also have React, you know, extension for that. We can use that as well. So both things will do. Yeah.
Okay. Have you used the profiler before within DevTools?
I have not. Yeah, not
Okay.
at the
Do you know
moment.
what it's for?
I no, I didn't. I mean, I've seen it, but I've never tried to use it. I don't know why, but I've not. Yeah.
Okay. Um, how would you go about optimizing performance of a React application?
Yeah, there are multiple things that you could do with. So there may be multiple things. First thing would be, if your app is what it is called first rendered, I mean, first paint, or I could not recall the name, first paint that is rendered on the page. That's say for example, if it takes like 3 seconds to render the first paint of your app, right? That technically means like something is blocking, right? It could be some third party API call or something like that could be there, or even image that you are trying to render on the landing page, or even a big video that you are trying to uh, render. Then in that case I would use something like lazy loading, because it does not have to block the whole UI part, and it should render quickly. Second would be, if there is a laggy UI, that means the same UI is getting called multiple times, because there is some side effect that is happening on its parent element, and due to that parent element gets updated all the time, the children of them are also getting updated, and that for no reason. So that to fix it, I will be looking at its parent element, children element, and try to see and investigate where is the problem, right? Third would be, if it is about, if you want to like optimize it for better performance, I would say I would use something like server side rendering, because if everything is done by the server and you don't have to worry about how it is whole HTML CSS gets assembled on the browser side of it, then it is easier if you can use something like Express.js or even Next.js and render the whole UI into the server side, through the server side, right? That would be the third thing I think would do. Lazy loading, use callback, use memo would be for performance, and server side rendering would be the third one. Yeah. And I think if you're talking about images and all, we can use something like CDNs like Cloudinary or something. So this will also solve some of the problems. Yeah.
Okay. When we're talking about re-rendering, what are some, what are some potential reasons why re-renders occur, and what are some of the other options that we have to avoid them? I know you mentioned use callback, use memo. What are maybe some other ways that we can avoid re-rendering?
Yeah, I think re-rendering happens because of one reason. One reason would be if your parent components renders, right, and the children also gets rendered because of that. For example, you have a component A that has a children component of B and C and D, right? So one major reason could be that you are doing something like props drilling. So basically, you're passing data from A to B and B to C and C to D, and B and C should not be knowing about that particular data. You should be passing it from A to D directly, but B and C are coming into it, so you're basically doing the props drilling part. This could be one reason why B and C are re-rendering all the time every time A updates, right? That could be one reason. And I think apart from use callback, use memo, what you would do is you would use something like React.memo. So React.memo is used to memoize the whole component. And if you are passing the props, and these props are actually the same one that you have passed already, so it will not be re-rendering all the time. So this is, I think, the third way which you could use to avoid it. I think, yeah, this is the third one. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, talking about testing, so how would you test a React component? Maybe what are tools or frameworks do you prefer to use when testing React applications?
Yeah, I have used, I think, React testing library. I honestly did not do much of a testing into the React side. I have done some things multiple times, but not very I've done unit testing mostly. I have been learning snapshot testing since long time, but I did not apply that part actually. I have only done unit testing. So on the unit testing side, I would use something like Jest or and React testing library that are already inbuilt into the Create React app. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on tests overall? How much code coverage should there be for your code? Is it important that every function and every component is tested? What's your overall opinion on testing?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I would say like unit testing should be done on every component, because every component should be eligible for that at least. Integration testing I have not done, so I cannot comment on that. And there may be more type of testing as well apart from integration snapshot. Um, Testing is one thing that we should do when we are dealing with micro front-end architecture, where you have multiple apps and each of the app is using some part of micro front-end that you have already built into different project, and you are using at multiple places the same component you are using at multiple places. Then testing becomes very important. Otherwise, if you change something into the parent component of it, then whole product and all the remaining product will also break. So for sure, testing is important into that cases. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What's your experience with micro front ends?
Yeah, on the micro front end side, I have done couple of things. One would be, actually majorly I started building micro front end I think in 1.5 year back, when I was at Tricorp building a medical application. I was applying all of that, like I was kind of building a multiple graphs. We had multiple graphs that will show data of a heart patient, right? All of these waves and all of this, right? So I was building this graph and putting them into a separate repository, though we did not do it publicly, which means like we did not put it on npm or something like that. We had our own internal system which was having this all the information. And I think, yeah, majorly that's what I've done. Apart from that, there were like at Sara I had applied the same thing. We had two applications into the React side. One was called Viceme, and there was Eco Returns. So there we had an e-commerce Shopify app which was integrated with Shopify, and which was using these components. So yeah, I mean small components, but yes, we were needing at two different places the same UI part. So I was building that as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Last question regarding React.
Yeah.
So, what are some best practices for developing and maintaining a large-scale React application?
Yeah. Okay. I think one best practice anyone could have is, like, to me at least, is that like we can start using testing. That is the first one. Okay, unit testing at least is needed. Second one would be is using the TypeScript, because TypeScript is the game changer for me. I mean, when I'm building applications which are going on large extensions, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? And then you build that app and you realize that, okay, this is what I missed, right? Then all of these issues that you could have come up with into the production and fix them, you are seeing these issues early on. So I think this is the second one. If you're building an application that needs visibility, that needs people's attention, right? Not like a normal dashboard, something like landing page or something where people can land on through a Google search or something, then I would say we could use either small Express server and host everything from there, right? So server side rendering is enabled, or we can use something like Next.js, because Next.js is something that is being used widely, and React documentation, official documentation, says the same thing, that we can use Next for that as well. So, and image optimization is one thing we could do, that is also needed. Lazy loading we can do. Lazy loading is also important if you're dealing with multiple products coming on the same page, right? We could follow that as well.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
I'm asking more in terms of I guess organizational ways that you would organizational best practices when it comes to developing and maintaining a large scale React application. So let's say we have a team of 30 engineers, working on one React application. What are some of the things that are important when you start to hit that sort of scale?
Yeah, I think then in that case, micro front end would be the one, I would say. We can follow some of the things into that. I mean, if it is a single React application, state management is other thing we could follow that, right? Third thing could be, I mean, I have applied some of the things, but I'm not quite sure about something like API caching. I mean, something like React query could be used into it. I've used it, but I'm not very sure about it. I have not done myself. It was already built into the system. I used it. Yeah. So API caching could be the third thing if you're dealing with multiple APIs and simultaneous APIs are getting called and all. All of these things we can do. If you're dealing with Redux, then asynchronous Redux should be there. That is like Redux Thunk, I think we could use as well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all.